Welcome to Being Intrepid, where we share practical insights with leaders who are shaping the future of learning and work. I'm thrilled to be joined by Clark Quinn today. Clark, welcome.
Thank you very much.
We're recording live here at DevLearn in Las Vegas, and we'll be releasing this podcast in a few weeks. But Clark is the founder of his own firm, which focuses on performance consulting, learning, and is I think in my intro notes, I had that you'd written a book, but I think you've written like 7 books. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So far. Yeah, so far. Yeah. So I'm really excited to welcome you today. And I always like to kind of hear a bit about people's background and what led them into this industry. And Clark, you really have an impressive background in cognitive science, cognitive psychology. University of California, San Diego is your PhD. So tell us about what your path from this academic background, which is phenomenal, to the world of corporate learning.
But it's actually started before I did my PhD.
Okay.
I designed my own major. I saw the connection between computers and learning as an undergraduate. Designed my own major in computer-based education, which is what we called it back then. My university didn't have a program in it, but they had a program where you could design your own major.
Perfect.
So I designed my own major and did it. I had a job designing and programming educational computer games way back when on the old Apple II and the TRS-80 Model 1 Boatacre. And realized we didn't know enough. And so I read an article calling for cognitive engineering. I said, oh, that's what I want to do. That's why I did my PhD with a guy who had written the article, actually. And I did the academic route for a while. So I did a postdoc, and then I went on and did a standard faculty member overseas in Australia, actually, even though I'm a Yank. And when the birth of our first child triggered a homing instinct, and I joined a startup by the guy who'd hired me out of college to do the programming computer games. He now was working for this firm and wanted to know about learning science. And I said, you need to know this, you need to know this, you need to know I'm looking to come back to the U.S. So, and the classic
I'm available.
Yeah, exactly. And the classic case, right? Yeah. Okay, I don't know. Could you be here last week? So I came back to the U.S., and that got me into the corporate world. I'd been looking to stay in the academic world, but there weren't any openings at the time. So I joined that, and then when the internet bubble collapsed in 2001, I became an independent consultant. And that eventually went from a euphemism for unemployed to a way of life. And I've been doing it for now a quarter century, I realize. And it's had its ups and downs and goods and bads. But that focus, having gotten that PhD in cognitive science and the focus on cognitive and learning sciences, has permeated what I do. It's what I care about, and you'll see that it plays a role in all the books and everything I do.
Yes. Well, and it's so instructive for instructional designers and our profession to be grounded in the science and be taking their cues in the science, not the latest fad du jour, right?
Well, absolutely. Medical professionals have to understand medicine, and plumbing professionals have to understand plumbing. And why shouldn't we understand how the brains of people actually learn? And it's interesting because in some ways, the human brain is the most complicated thing in the known universe, and thinking that we're going to change it in systematic ways with idiosyncratic approaches is kind of naive. And we really should pay attention. It was nice the keynote this morning actually highlighted the importance of learning science. Got it somewhat wrong, but
but the headline was there, right?
Yeah, the focus on learning science was really good.
Good. Well, I think I mentioned in our prep too. I have a daughter who's a senior in high school, and she is this is her intended major. This is what she's interested in. So it just seems like, it's particularly now with AI and everything that's changing, all that we're learning with brain science, it just seems like a really exciting field to go into now, as it was when you entered.
Well, it is, and as things change faster and faster, one thing that isn't really changing fast is our cognitive architecture. And so if you know that, you can design for people. And that's becoming increasingly critical as the technology changes faster and faster, and organizations try and move. We're finding the empirical evidence repeatedly is that aligning with how people actually think, work, and learn yields the best results. So you have to understand it. So I think your daughter's absolutely, if she combines that with a bit of technology understanding and a little bit about business and policy, she's going to be able to do anything she wants. And that's really cool.
So Annika, you heard it here from Clark. Okay. So Clark, tell us about your session. I mean, this is a perfect segue talking about the cognitive architecture of the brain. Your session is on spaced learning here at DevLearn. Tell us what that means and what you covered and why that's so important from the cognitive architecture perspective.
Right. Well, spaced learning, too often we do events we do learning as an event based.
Yes.
We say, oh, you come in, we dump a bunch of content and practice, and then we let you go, and we don't do anything more. Yep. And that's not how our brain learns. Yep. You can use several metaphors. So one is drip irrigation. You don't just flood it and then leave the plants. You drip a little bit over time. And the same thing going to the gym. You go to the gym once, you're not going to suddenly be buff. Yep. You have to go again and again and again and do these space things. And that's how how learning works. The mechanism, speaking of brain science, the mechanism that actually strengthens the connections, which is what learning is really, is strengthening connections, fatigues after doing only so much in a day. And so it can't do anymore until you literally need sleep. And so then you reactivate it. And reactivating is best when you're just about to forget it. So not right away, but a couple days later, and then spaced out a little bit more. Yeah. But that reactivation over time is what develops the ability to repeatedly do, and that's why it's so important, and that's what it takes. But the nuances of what to do at the right time. Early on, you want to reactivate the learning and have them apply it in simulated sessions, but too often our learning ends when we've developed the learner, but we haven't supported them in applying it in the practice world. And so going on and saying, what are your plans, and what are you seeing as barriers? How is it going? How are you revising your plan? All these sorts of elements are components of getting this right to actually lead to new abilities to do.
Right. So, we talked a little bit earlier too about some examples of maybe organizations are doing this right. Businesses that have, solved particular challenges where spaced learning is really clear that is the method that they're highlighting. So give us an example.
Well, you can think about the aviation industry. They train for things they hope never to see. Mm-hmm. And yet, if they do, you would like them to be prepared. You think of Sully Sullenberger landing the plane on the Hudson River. Yeah. That came from having practiced a number of different things, water landings, engines going out, and they practice this again and again. So that capability is there when they need it. Right. And unfortunately, we don't do near enough of it in our industry. In places where lives are on the line, so medicine and the military and aviation, we see it. Yeah. But we don't see it enough, and it's because two reasons, I think. Yeah. And you've probably seen this yourself. People who've been to school think they know what learning looks like. Right. And that's rote recitation. It's not ability to solve meaningful problems. Yep. And the other thing is, so with that belief in the tools that are aligned to take content and put it on the screen and add a quiz, and you pass a knowledge test, sometimes by taking it several times until you hit the 80%, you're done. You're learned, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But that...
and it's gone.
Right. And, you actually have to do the thing in practice that you're going to do out in the world, and taking knowledge about it and passing knowledge tests about it, but not doing it isn't going to lead to any ability to do it. And that doesn't help.
Right. So, when designers or learning leaders are trying to get started with spaced learning, what is some of your advice to them about, if this is a newer concept to them, maybe they're not, is ingrained in the brain science and learning sciences. How do you advise that they get started with this?
Well, I would love for people to design better, events first. Yes. But I don't see a problem. You still have to present some initial content and give some initial practice. I don't mind that being considered as an event. Sure. Sometimes it's nice to have that done with asynchronous learning, so that valuable face-to-face time is spent on practice. But after the event, that's when you reactivate, and you can string things out. It can be social or independent, depending on whose platform you're talking to. Right. But it doesn't matter. But the main thing is, start with just reactivating stuff after the event that's well-designed, meaningful practice. That'll actually force you to go back and fix your event science design as well, because you're going to realize I'm building on stuff that hasn't really been established before. Let's go back and make sure we establish that, and then we build on that. And of course, the other thing you have to do is you have to measure. You have to look at the outputs and say, is it persisting? Are we actually continuing to do this new behavior in the workplace, or why not? Julie Dirksen has a lovely book, Talk to the Elephant, that talks about all the reasons we don't actually end up learning. And then, is it moving a needle in the organization? Ultimately, that's what you should be trying to do.
Yeah, changing that performance. So, what's your perspective on some of the newer kind of micro learning in the flow types of modalities? And I won't add any my own perspective here, but I am seeing this move in a lot of organizations to learning in the flow as a replacement of more long form learning, more programmatic learning, whether that's spaced or events. But I'm just curious on your perspective, because it is captured so much of the zeitgeist today.
Yeah, and I have trouble with both those terms. Yeah. Micro learning, because that actually can be two things. Yeah. One is spaced learning, and a little bits over time. Yeah. But it's not just taking your course and breaking up into chunks. Right. You have to say, I'm going to reactivate this and reactivate this again and reactivate this again, not go on to new stuff, because that stuff's going to atrophy. So there's a lot that goes into design. But the other thing people do and talk about microlearning is actually performance support, where it's the thing that helps you accomplish it. And if it's something you don't do very frequently, trying to put it in the head is silly. Put it in the world and have a checklist or a job aid or a list of steps to take, whatever it is. And because of that confusion, I don't like the term microlearning, because which one are you talking about? Right. I do like the push to smaller and minimal. That's a good thing. And I think it could be driving us back to stuff I've advocated for a long time, which is content engineering. Then learning in the workflow has a similar problem, because, and a group admit this is definitional. To me, if you're learning, you're not in the flow, because you need to take time to get feedback and reflect on it, and that's not breaks the flow. Some people say, oh, well, that part of the flow. Okay, if you want to define that as part of the flow. Yeah. But the other thing you can do with learning in the workflow has nothing to do with learning. Again, it's performance support. You can put tools in the flow work that lets people get things done, and no learning has to happen. I fixed my dryer by watching a YouTube video and going in and figuring out, I have no idea what I did. I can barely remember what part of the dryer, and I would have to search to find the video again, but I got it done, and that's what mattered. And no learning occurred. And so I like small, I like beginning to make it more relevant to the workflow, but you've got to dig into the nuances and the details, and those buzz phrases to me cause trouble. So you said you weren't going to give your own opinion. Now you can.
Well, what I'm hearing you say, and what I share, is it's about this intentionality. It's not about this modality. It's about the intentionality of the design to reactivate learning at a certain time and in a spaced kind of model,
or to avoid learning at all and support people actually just getting the job done for stuff that isn't going to be there, or it's so critical we don't want to trust people's memory. There's times when it makes sense. We ignore that too much. So, thank you.
So looking ahead a few years in this world of AI that we're consumed with and so on, how do you think learning experiences will change over time?
Well, I remember somebody saying, never predict anything, including the future. And I actually heard a guy talk about this. Now, he said, the trends go, but then there's this unexpected left turn always. And so I try and say what I think should be seeing.
Should is actually more interesting, I think.
I would love to see more experiential learning, where people are actually put into the circumstances. And we can do this with technology. We can change the scale with virtual reality. You can be in tiny micro things, or it can be huge, outer space. And we can, use interactive video and things to make really compelling experiences but I don't trust AI to know about making the choices. And that may change, or I may be wrong. But large language models, which is what people mean these days by AI instead of AI more broadly, and that's I've been around long enough. I've been an AI groupie for decades, literally before they had the machine learning. I happened to be in the lab where that the revolution happened. I was in a different part of the lab, but Dave Romahart and Jay McClellan with their PDP books essentially introduced machine learning. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of it. But right now, the problem with generative AI, first, large language models, they are designed to make what sounds like good speech. Mm-hmm. They make good answers. Oh, no, they make what sounds like good answers. That's what they're designed to do. They don't make good answers. They may make good answers, but you can't count on it, particularly when they've been trained on stuff. I have a number of other problems. The IP that they've been trained on has been stolen. They have huge environmental costs in energy and water. People's electricity bills are going up because of AI data centers. They don't do what people think they do. They're really not revolutionary. They're evolutionary. They're just did at scale the same old algorithms, but the scale made a difference in terms of its intelligibility. People are using them wrong. They're using them to get to organizations are removing people and letting AI do it, and that's a recipe for disaster. There's security issues with agentic AI. They can, when they do coding, they could steal code that has backdoors set into it. You could be having security reveals. The list goes on. The biggest concern for me right now is the hype and the venture capital that's supporting it. When that goes away, and it will, because eventually they're going to decide that they've funded enough and they want to get the returns, the costs are going to have to go up. It's been propping it up, and we're going to see, I'm fear, and I hope I'm wrong, an AI bubble burst, like the internet bubble burst that I was a victim of back in the 2000s, that, and I just would want people to be very careful with what they're doing with these systems. So I don't think they understand, because they do language, not knowledge. They don't really know context, and they can't really design the right context for practice. So I think that's, if nothing else, I expect that to be what we will retain and have the ability to do. Eventually we will build predictive, active inference, predictive coding AI models that may understand this and be able to do a good job. But I don't think large language models are going to be able to do it.
Okay. So you see a future kind of maybe after we go through a trough of a next generation here, it will be up to the task.
The Gartner hype cycle, right? They made that up, but it's still it captures a lot of examples. But I think we'll go beyond generative AI, and other AI models will come back in and will recognize the value, and we may not have to have an AI winter. Like we did.
The voice of experience and wisdom.
Hard earned.
Hard earned. So let's end with a little bit of a lightning round here, Clark. So favorite learning science insight that you've picked up lately?
Lately would be the generative stuff. I've cared about elaboration, but learning scientists right now, they mostly do K-12 type of learning, but they're focusing on the value of generative learning activities. And it really is something that I haven't focused enough on. So we know about retrieval practice, but the necessity of taking ownership of that knowledge by reframing it in different ways and representing it in ways that people can look at it and say, oh, I can tell you have this misconception because of the way you've drawn this here, and you can remedy that. And also by representing it, you're strengthening the connections to previous knowledge. And both of those, I think, are an interesting new direction.
Okay. What's the most underlooked application of space learning you can?
Just in general,
it should be used more.
It's everything we should be learning that should be making a difference in the organization. We're not going to master right away. There's very little that is what David Geary termed evolutionarily primary, biologically primary. Most of the things we need to learn we've created, and therefore our brains aren't wired to learn, and so we need instruction, and that's when spaced learning absolutely is a necessity.
Right. Yeah, when in our business, where I see some really natural on ramps for the conversation are things like onboarding, which naturally take place over time, and so it just clicks. People get it.
Learning things initially, new stuff. Spaced learning really can help. It can play a role. How do you extend learning for things that you add complexity over time? But spacing can be coaching and giving you stretch assignments and more.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. One book you'd recommend to our audience?
Besides mine?
Besides your own. All of clearly your own.
Right. Oh, well, I think everybody should read Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things. It's just one of those few books that actually changes the way you look at the world. Okay. Door handles and shower knobs and stuff. And that way of thinking, he's moved on. He was my PhD advisor, so I'm a bit biased. But he's moved on and says he got it wrong because he now thinks you also need to include the bigger picture of the impact on society, which I respect and absolutely believe. But even just that simple step of beginning to understand how the simple things that people perceive, like affordances and the way we communicate information, like mapping, are principles that just don't seem to be used enough and really can make a difference in everything we do.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Clark, thanks so much for joining me today on Being Intrepid and this live podcast here at DevLearn. If our audience would like to learn more about your services, what you provide, and maybe how to think about this change to space learning and engaging and activating the brain, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, Quinnovation.com is me. Yes. That's my site. But I also have a blog, learnits.com. Okay. And things that end up appearing in books and presentations and stuff tend to appear there first. So there I talk about space learning and generative learning and all sorts of wacko things that whatever occurs to me. It's less formal than, the articles I write for the LDA or anything. But I encourage you, if you need help sleeping at night, that's a great place to go.
All right, great. So thank you to our audience. Stay curious, keep asking the tough questions, and keep on learning. Thanks so much.